Imagine a child sitting on the floor, surrounded by crayons, markers, and blank sheets of paper. Their world feels limitless, every page a chance to bring something new to life. For them, there's no fear in creating, it's pure joy, pure freedom. But then, one day someone, maybe a parent, maybe a teacher, maybe just another kid, makes a careless remark, "That looks messy," or "You're not very good at this." Suddenly the joy dims. The child looks at their paper, then at the crayons, and something shifts. The next day they hesitate to draw. The day after they don't pick up the crayons at all. Soon the box of colors sits untouched in the corner, gathering dust. Now here's the question. Was that child lazy for giving up on drawing, or were they carrying pain that no one else could see? What if what we call laziness is really just the scars of moments like this? Moments where we were made to feel unsafe, judged, or not enough. This is the thing about trauma. It doesn't always show up as big, dramatic events. Sometimes it hides in small, quiet moments that plant seeds of self-doubt. Years later, when you put off writing that email, avoid going to the gym, or freeze before starting a new project, it's easy to blame yourself and say, "I'm just lazy." But maybe you're not lazy at all. Maybe your mind and body are simply remembering the sting of past experiences and shutting down to protect you from feeling that way again. Laziness is an easy label, but beneath it, more often than not, is a story, your story. And when you start to see it that way, everything changes. Break the myth of laziness. We live in a world that throws the word lazy around so carelessly, as if it's the simplest explanation for human behavior. You didn't clean your room? Lazy. You put off a big project? Lazy. You stayed in bed longer than usual? Lazy. But what if this label is not only misleading, it's deeply unfair? What if laziness, as we use it, is just a mask that hides the real story? Think about it. Human beings are wired for survival, for growth, for contribution. Our instincts push us to seek food, comfort, relationships, and purpose. So why would someone deliberately sabotage themselves by being lazy? More often than not, the truth is not laziness. It's exhaustion, fear, or unprocessed pain that hasn't yet found its way to the surface. Exhaustion is an easy one to miss. It's not just about being physically tired, it's emotional and mental depletion, the kind that builds up when you've been running on autopilot for too long, carrying responsibilities without rest, or constantly battling your own inner critic. A person in that state doesn't avoid tasks because they don't care, they avoid them because their energy tank is completely empty. Calling that laziness is like blaming a phone for shutting down when the battery is dead. Then there's fear. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of repeating an old humiliation. Many of us hesitate not because we lack ability, but because we remember what happened the last time we tried. Imagine someone who once spoke up in class and got laughed at. Years later, they stay quiet in meetings. To an outsider, that looks like disengagement, but to the person it feels like survival. And of course, there's unprocessed experience, trauma that lingers in the nervous system. Trauma doesn't disappear just because time passes. It sits inside the body, shaping how we act and react, often without us even realizing it. When someone freezes before starting something important, when they endlessly delay tasks that could move them forward, it's often because their body still associates action with danger. That freeze response is a survival mechanism, not laziness. Let's use a simple comparison. Imagine a car that refuses to start in the morning. You could call it a lazy car, but the truth is something under the hood needs attention. Maybe the battery, maybe the engine, maybe the fuel line. The same applies to us. What looks like laziness is usually a sign that something deeper inside us is calling for care. Think of the people you know or even yourself. How many times have you said, "I'm just lazy," when deep down you were tired, overwhelmed, or afraid of the weight of what needed to be done? We dismiss our struggles with that word because it feels easier than admitting we're hurting. But in doing so, we strip away compassion for ourselves. Here's the bigger picture. Laziness is rarely the truth. People aren't broken machines. They're complex, feeling beings with histories that shape their present. Behind what looks like avoidance, there's often someone fighting a battle no one else can see. And when you start seeing it this way, you stop judging yourself so harshly. You begin to realize that what you called laziness might actually be a cry for rest, healing, or gentleness. And that shift, the move from judgment to understanding, is the first step to reclaiming your power. Trauma disguises itself as procrastination. Procrastination is one of those behaviors that gets labeled as laziness all the time. "Why can't I just do it?" is a question almost everyone has asked themselves. But what most people don't realize is that procrastination is often less about willpower and more about safety, specifically the nervous system trying to protect you from something it has learned to fear. Trauma doesn't just live in the mind, it's stored in the body. The nervous system develops patterns based on past experiences, and those patterns decide how we react in the present. If in the past taking action led to pain, criticism, rejection, failure, even humiliation, the body remembers, it learns action is dangerous. And when something reminds it of that old danger, even in the smallest way, the nervous system responds with avoidance. This avoidance often looks like procrastination. Take something as simple as answering an email. To most people, it's a quick task. But to someone whose past is filled with being shamed or scolded for mistakes, hitting reply can trigger the nervous system to freeze. The email becomes more than words on a screen. It becomes a reminder of judgment, of not being good enough. And so instead of replying, the person avoids it, distracts themselves, or convinces themselves they'll do it later. That's not laziness, it's a protective reflex. Or consider going to the gym. On the surface, it's about health and fitness. But imagine someone who, years ago, was mocked for how they looked while exercising. Their body carries the memory of that humiliation. Now, every time they think about walking into a gym, their nervous system floods with the same sense of danger. To the outside world, skipping the gym looks like procrastination. Inside, it's a shield against old wounds reopening. This is the trick of trauma. It disguises self-protection as hesitation. The brain doesn't distinguish between past and present the way we'd like it to. To the nervous system, a reminder of an old pain feels like it's happening all over again. And so when you delay making that phone call, starting that project, or taking that first step, your body isn't being defiant. It's trying to keep you safe from something it believes is harmful. Procrastination, then, isn't a character flaw, it's a coping mechanism. It's the nervous system saying, "Wait, don't move forward. Danger lives there." And because these signals are often subconscious, we don't realize what's happening. All we see is the delay, the avoidance, the pileup of tasks. Then we add self-criticism on top, which makes the nervous system even more stressed, and the cycle repeats. But here's the important shift. Once you understand procrastination through the lens of trauma, everything changes. You stop blaming yourself. You begin to see the hesitation not as laziness but as a clue, your body showing you where old wounds still live. And from that place of awareness, you can start to heal. That healing doesn't come from forcing yourself harder or shaming yourself into action. It comes from gently proving to your nervous system that the present is not the past. Each small action, sending one short reply, doing 5 minutes at the gym, tackling just the first step of a task, becomes a way of retraining the body. It's not about perfection. It's about showing yourself over and over again that you are safe now. So the next time procrastination shows up, pause before you call yourself lazy. Ask instead, what is my body trying to protect me from? Because when you realize procrastination is trauma in disguise, you unlock compassion, and compassion is what makes real change possible. The nervous system sets role. The human nervous system is a masterpiece of survival. It was designed to keep us alive long before modern life existed, long before emails, deadlines, gyms, or social media. At its core, the nervous system only has one job: to detect danger and protect us from it. That's where the famous trio of responses comes in: fight, flight, and freeze. When the body feels threatened, it automatically chooses one of these strategies. The fascinating part is that this mechanism doesn't just respond to physical threats like a wild animal. It also responds to emotional ones: judgment, rejection, failure, or even the fear of disappointing others. Let's break it down. Fight is straightforward. It's the surge of energy that makes you argue back, defend yourself, or push through something with intensity. Flight is the urge to escape, running away from a situation, avoiding a conversation, or distracting yourself with endless scrolling because facing the task feels unbearable. Then there's freeze, which is often misunderstood. Freeze is when the system feels so overwhelmed that it shuts everything down. You know that moment when you stare at your to-do list, unable to start even though the tasks are simple? That's freeze. Freeze is one of the most common responses people confuse with laziness. On the surface, it looks like doing nothing, but in reality, your nervous system is working overtime. It's saying, if I stop completely, I'll stay safe. Think of an animal in the wild. When cornered by a predator, some animals play dead. It's not weakness, it's survival. Humans do the same thing, only our predators are often invisible. The memory of failure, the fear of rejection, or the overwhelming pressure of expectations. Imagine someone who has a big assignment due. They sit down to start, but suddenly their body feels heavy. Their mind fogs. They reach for their phone, telling themselves they'll start in a few minutes. Hours pass, and the guilt piles up. From the outside, it looks like laziness. But what's really happening is that their nervous system has gone into freeze, trying to protect them from the threat of failing or not meeting the standard. This is why calling someone lazy is not only inaccurate but damaging. It ignores the fact that their entire system is in survival mode. You wouldn't call someone lazy for fainting in the heat. The body is simply responding to overwhelm. The same is true here. Laziness implies choice. Freeze is not a choice. It's a reflex, a biological reaction hardwired into us. The truth is, your nervous system doesn't care about productivity. It doesn't care if you finish your project, fold the laundry, or reply to that message. It only cares about survival. So when it senses, even incorrectly, that something could hurt you, it reacts with fight, flight, or freeze. In many cases, freeze takes over because it feels safest. Here's the reframe. The shutdown you experience isn't laziness. It's your nervous system crying out, I feel unsafe. And that's powerful to realize, because it shifts the problem from being about your character to being about your biology. Once you understand that, you can start working with your nervous system instead of fighting against it. Small acts of safety, breathing exercises, gentle routines, breaking tasks into tiny steps, signal to your body that the threat has passed. Over time, the system learns it no longer has to shut down to keep you safe. So, the next time you freeze and feel the weight of self-judgment, Remember this, your body isn't betraying you, it's protecting you in the only way it knows how. That isn't laziness, it's survival. And survival in its rawest form is proof of your strength. Real life example #1. Let's talk about the gym. On the surface, skipping a workout looks like a simple case of laziness. You say to yourself, I should go, I want to go, but I just don't. Hours pass, maybe even days, and the guilt builds. The common narrative, you're undisciplined, unmotivated, lazy. But if we slow down and dig deeper, the story is rarely that simple. For many people, the gym is not just a place to exercise, it's a place where old wounds are triggered. Maybe you were once laughed at in a gym class, struggling to keep up while others stared. Maybe someone made a cruel remark about your body, the way you ran, or how much you could lift. Or maybe as a child, physical performance was always tied to shame, being picked last for teams, being compared to stronger siblings, being told you weren't athletic. The body doesn't forget experiences like that. They live inside the nervous system. So when you think about going to the gym today, your conscious mind says, this is good for me. I'll feel better after. But your unconscious remembers humiliation, rejection, and pain. And because the nervous system cannot always tell the difference between past and present, it reacts as though those old dangers are still alive. Instead of excitement, you feel dread. Instead of motivation, you feel heavy resistance. To protect you, your body whispers, let's stay home. Let's avoid the risk. From the outside, this looks like procrastination. From the inside, it feels like safety. It's not that you don't care about your health or your goals. It's that your body is caught in a tug-of-war between desire and defense. Trauma disguises itself so well that you end up believing the lie, I must just be lazy. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you've been carrying unhealed memories that shaped how safe or unsafe you feel in certain spaces. Here's a relatable comparison. Imagine touching a hot stove as a child. It burns. The next time you walk into the kitchen, even years later, a part of your body flinches at the sight of that stove. You know logically it won't hurt you unless you touch it, but your nervous system remembers the pain and prepares to protect you. The gym or any intimidating place works the same way. Your body remembers the burn of embarrassment, and even though it's not happening now, the fear still kicks in. This is why some people can't get through the gym doors even if they desperately want change. It's why others buy memberships, new clothes, even plan routines but never follow through. It's not laziness, it's the body defending itself against an invisible predator, the memory of shame. The healing starts not with shame, but with compassion. Instead of saying, I'm too lazy to go, try asking, what old story is my body holding on to that makes this feel unsafe? From there, you can start small. Maybe it's one workout at home, or walking outside instead of entering a crowded gym. Each small action becomes a way of retraining your nervous system, teaching it, this is safe now. I am safe now. The irony is that the very act of calling yourself lazy only strengthens the cycle. It piles shame on top of old shame, making the gym feel even harder to face. But when you shift the language, when you see resistance as protection rather than weakness, you reclaim power. You begin to understand that the battle isn't about willpower, it's about healing. So the next time you put off going to the gym, pause. Instead of judging yourself, look inward. Ask what your body remembers, what it fears, and how you can gently show it that today is different. Because once you see through the disguise, procrastination stops being a sign of laziness and starts being a signal that it's time to heal. Real life example #2. Picture a child who grows up in a family where effort is never enough. They bring home a report card with 4 A's and 1 B, and instead of hearing "great job," they hear, "why isn't this an A too?" They clean their room, but a parent points out the corner that wasn't dusted. They score a goal in a game, but someone reminds them of the time they missed. Over time, that child learns a painful lesson: no matter what they do, it will never be good enough. Fast forward to adulthood. Now that same person sits down to start a project, maybe writing a paper, applying for a new job, or even trying a creative hobby. But before they even begin, their brain whispers, "What's the point? It won't be good enough anyway." The task feels heavy, not because it's impossible, but because their nervous system is still carrying the weight of all those years of criticism. To protect themselves from the sting of not enough, they avoid starting altogether. From the outside, it looks like laziness. On the inside, it feels like hopelessness. This is what conditioning does. It programs the body and mind to expect failure or rejection, even when the present situation is different. Think of it like a groove carved into a record. Once it's deep enough, the needle automatically falls into it. The nervous system isn't being lazy, it's following the path it learned long ago. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. A person might delay sending job applications, not because they don't want work, but because every time they think about pressing submit, they remember the countless times their efforts were dismissed. Or maybe someone avoids cooking dinner, not because they lack interest, but because years of being told, "you did it wrong," make the idea of trying again feel unbearable. It's not laziness, it's learned futility. Here's a simple comparison. Imagine playing a game where, no matter how hard you try, the rules are stacked against you. You take your shot, and the referee says it doesn't count. You cross the finish line and they move it farther away. Eventually you'd stop playing. Not because you don't care, but because the game feels unwinnable. That's what growing up in constant comparison feels like. When adulthood arrives, every new task looks like another unwinnable game. The tragedy is that this conditioning makes people internalize the idea that the problem is them, that they are lazy, unmotivated, or incapable. But the truth is, they've simply been taught to stop trying. The nervous system has linked effort with disappointment, so it steps in to save them from reliving that pain. It whispers, "Don't bother. Protect yourself." Breaking this pattern starts with awareness. It means noticing when you avoid something and asking, "Am I afraid this won't be enough? And whose voice am I really hearing when I think that?" Often the harshest critic in adulthood isn't our own voice at all. It's the echo of old family voices replaying in our head. Small wins are the antidote. Starting tiny tasks and celebrating them begins to rewrite the old script. Maybe it's finishing a short journal entry, cooking a simple meal, or sending one job application. Each act proves to your nervous system that effort isn't always met with rejection. Slowly, the body learns a new truth. I am allowed to start. I am allowed to try. My effort matters. So, the next time you delay something and call yourself lazy, pause. Ask yourself if what you're feeling is really laziness or the shadow of years where nothing was ever enough. Because once you name it, you can begin to heal it. And healing turns what once felt pointless into something possible. The hidden weight of self-judgment. There's the struggle itself, the procrastination, the freeze, the inability to start. But then, layered on top of that, comes something even heavier: self-judgment. The moment you call yourself lazy, you take whatever challenge you're facing and double its weight. Instead of carrying just the difficulty of starting, you also carry shame. And shame is one of the most paralyzing emotions a human being can experience. Think about it. You wake up with a list of things to do. Maybe it's laundry, answering messages, or starting an important assignment. Hours slip by, and you realize you've done nothing. The voice in your head begins, "You're so lazy, you'll never change. What's wrong with you?" That voice doesn't motivate, it suffocates. It pushes you deeper into the very freeze you're trying to escape. Shame is not a fuel, it's a weight. And unlike guilt, which says I did something wrong, shame says I am wrong. That distinction matters. Guilt can spark change because it focuses on behavior. Shame attacks identity. Once you internalize the idea that you're lazy, that belief seeps into everything you do. You stop seeing the freeze response as a temporary state and start seeing it as who you are. That's when it becomes even harder to move. Here's an everyday example. Imagine a student who procrastinates on writing a paper. When the deadline gets closer, they panic. But instead of saying, "I avoided this because I was overwhelmed," they tell themselves, "I'm just lazy and useless." That judgment floods their nervous system with stress, making it even harder to think clearly. Instead of breaking the cycle, the shame reinforces it. The student feels stuck, not only because of the task, but because of how they see themselves. Or think of someone avoiding house chores. The dishes pile up, and instead of gently acknowledging, "I've been drained lately, that's why I haven't tackled this," they attack themselves. "Look at you, lazy slob." That self-talk doesn't inspire action. It cements the freeze. Suddenly doing one dish feels impossible because the task is no longer just about cleaning, it's about proving you're not as worthless as you just told yourself you were. This is how self-judgment turns into a trap. The nervous system, already overwhelmed, hears the harsh inner voice as another threat. It says, "I'm unsafe inside my own mind." And when your own thoughts become hostile, the freeze response strengthens. The body shuts down further to shield itself from internal attack. What started as hesitation becomes paralysis. The irony is, most people use self-criticism because they believe it will motivate them. They think, "If I'm hard on myself, I'll finally change." But the opposite is true. Harshness breeds more resistance. Compassion, not criticism, is what creates movement. A kind inner voice tells the nervous system, "You're safe. You can try again." A cruel voice says, "You're broken. Why bother?" Imagine a coach yelling insults at their team. "You're pathetic. You'll never win." Do you think that team will play better? Or will they play in fear, constantly bracing for the next insult? That's exactly what happens when you coach yourself with shame. The game becomes unwinnable. The truth is, self-judgment doesn't just label you, it traps you. Every time you say, "I'm lazy," you're reinforcing the very freeze you're desperate to escape. But when you reframe and say, "I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, I'm scared, and that's why I'm stuck," you shift the story. You move from blame to understanding, and in that understanding lies possibility. So the next time the word lazy rises in your mind, pause. Ask yourself, what's underneath this? What am I really feeling? Because the moment you replace shame with compassion, you lighten the load, and a lighter load is always easier to carry forward. Small wins matter. When people think about change, they often imagine big, dramatic breakthroughs. The total lifestyle overhaul, the perfectly consistent routines, the endless motivation to keep going without fail. But the truth is, healing rarely looks that way. It isn't found in giant leaps. It's built in small, almost ordinary actions that slowly teach your nervous system something new. Small wins matter more than most people realize. Think about washing one dish. On the surface, it seems insignificant compared to the entire pile in the sink. You might even hear your inner critic scoff, "One dish. That doesn't solve anything." But here's the reality, that one dish is not about cleaning. It's about breaking through the freeze response. It's about sending a signal to your body that you are capable of movement, capable of choice, capable of doing. And that single signal, repeated often enough, begins to rewire the way your nervous system responds. The same applies to making your bed. It's a small act, done in less than a minute, but it creates a ripple effect. You wake up, you complete one task, and your body feels a sense of closure, of progress. To a nervous system that's used to associating action with shame or failure, that tiny success says, "See, doing something can feel safe." It's not about the bed, it's about what your body learns in the process. Oh, think about sending one message. Maybe you've been avoiding replying to friends or colleagues because it feels overwhelming. Drafting a long, perfect response feels impossible, so you stay silent. But when you choose to send even a short message, just one line, you're teaching your body, "I can engage and it doesn't have to be painful." That single step softens the freeze, and once it's softened, bigger actions become easier. Here's a useful comparison. Imagine a rusted door that hasn't been opened in years. If you try to shove it wide open in one push, it won't budge. You'll feel defeated and believe it's impossible. But if you press gently, inch by inch, day after day, eventually the rust loosens and the door swings open. Your nervous system works the same way. It doesn't need you to break it open with force. It needs small, consistent movements that gradually remind it that change is safe. The beauty of small wins is that they compound. Washing one dish today doesn't change your life, but washing one dish every day proves to your nervous system that you can act even when overwhelmed. That proof becomes confidence, confidence becomes momentum, and momentum is what transforms lives. It's also important to remember that small wins strip away the power of shame. When you set a giant, overwhelming task, failing to meet it often confirms the belief, "See, I'm lazy." But when you set a small, achievable action, success feels attainable. And success, even in tiny doses, rebuilds trust in yourself. Each win whispers, "You're not broken, you're healing." The world celebrates big accomplishments, but true recovery begins in the invisible victories. The moment you stand up when you wanted to stay in bed, the time you take a shower even when it feels pointless, the choice to write one sentence instead of a whole essay. These moments don't look glamorous, but they're revolutionary. They're not just tasks, they're rewiring moments. So never dismiss the power of small actions. They are not trivial. They are the proof that you're moving, that you're capable, that your nervous system can learn safety again. And when you string enough small wins together, one day you look back and realize you've built a new life, one tiny victory at a time. Permission to rest. One of the most damaging beliefs many people carry is that rest equals laziness. We live in a culture that glorifies constant movement, productivity, and hustle. If you're not doing something useful, the world tells you you're wasting time. But here's the truth. Rest is not a weakness. Rest is not laziness. Rest is repair. And when you've lived through trauma, when your nervous system has been on high alert for years, rest isn't optional. It's essential. Trauma puts the body into survival mode. The nervous system spends its energy scanning for threats, preparing to fight, run, or freeze at any moment. That's exhausting work. Imagine leaving your phone on 100% brightness with every app running in the background. It will drain the battery fast. That's what trauma does to the body. It burns through energy because it's always braced for danger. In that state, rest becomes medicine. Without it, your system can't reset. Yet many people resist rest. They feel guilty for taking a nap, for spending a quiet afternoon doing nothing, or for saying no to commitments. They call themselves lazy, unmotivated, or weak. But that guilt only adds to the exhaustion. The truth is, rest is not a luxury for the traumatized mind and body, it's part of healing. Just like a broken bone needs stillness to knit itself back together, your nervous system needs moments of quiet to rebuild trust in safety. Think of rest as a form of training. When you let yourself stop, breathe, and simply be, you're teaching your nervous system that it doesn't always have to fight or flee. You're showing your body that the world is not constantly on fire. That lesson can't be learned through endless action. It has to be experienced in stillness. Consider a simple example. You're exhausted, but instead of allowing yourself a nap, you push through, cleaning, working, scrolling, forcing productivity. By the end of the day, you're not only drained but also resentful, ashamed, and burnt out. Now imagine if you gave yourself permission to rest. You close your eyes for 20 minutes. You wake up refreshed, with enough energy to handle just one small task. That one task feels lighter, doable. The difference isn't laziness versus discipline, it's repair versus depletion. Rest can also take many forms. It doesn't always mean lying in bed. It could mean sitting quietly with a cup of tea, going for a gentle walk, listening to music, or simply turning your phone off for an hour. What matters is the intention behind it, choosing rest not as escape but as nourishment. Choosing to pause because your body deserves recovery, not because you're giving up. Here's a powerful reframe. Rest is productivity. Without it, your body can't sustain the energy to do anything meaningful. Athletes know this. Muscles don't grow during workouts. They grow during rest. Healing works the same way. The moments of stillness are where integration happens, where your system rewires, where strength is quietly built. So the next time guilt whispers, "You're lazy for resting," answer it with truth. "No, I'm repairing. I'm recharging. I'm rebuilding." Trauma recovery isn't about constantly pushing. It's about giving yourself the space to breathe, to soften, to exist without demand. Rest is not avoidance, it's preparation. It's your nervous system finally learning what it feels like to be safe again. Rest is not the opposite of progress. Rest is part of progress. And when you allow it fully, without shame, you give yourself one of the greatest gifts of healing, the permission to simply be human. Reframe productivity. For so many of us, productivity has been twisted into a measuring stick for our worth. We grow up hearing that if you aren't constantly achieving, you're falling behind. If you're not doing it perfectly, you might as well not do it at all. That voice creeps into everything: schoolwork, jobs, relationships, even hobbies. Trauma deepens this because it wires the nervous system to believe that being enough is always tied to performance. Every task becomes proof that you're worthy, or proof that you've failed. And if you don't even start, well, at least you don't risk failing. That's how the freeze cycle grows. But here's where the shift begins. Productivity doesn't need to mean flawless outcomes. Productivity, when reframed, can become an act of resistance against the old narrative trauma built around you. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a refusal to stay trapped in the story that says you aren't good enough. Think about it this way. If trauma taught you to believe your efforts don't matter, then every tiny action you take now is a quiet rebellion. Washing one dish, writing one line of a journal entry, doing one rep at the gym, these aren't insignificant. They are living proof that you're creating new pathways, carving out new truths for yourself. Perfectionism is trauma's favorite disguise. It tells you, don't bother unless it's flawless. And when you buy into that, you stall. But healing invites you to view progress differently. Progress isn't about flawless results. It's about showing up. It's about saying, even if this isn't perfect, it counts. Even if I wobble, it matters. Every small completion chips away at the idea that your worth is conditional. Here's a real-life example. Imagine you want to start going for walks. The old narrative says, if I don't walk 3 miles every day, it doesn't count. That pressure makes you avoid starting at all. But what if you reframe productivity as resistance to that voice? Suddenly, a 5-minute walk isn't failure, it's defiance. It's proof that you're no longer bound by the old all-or-nothing thinking. Or take writing an email you've been dreading. Your nervous system wants to shut down. The old belief says, if I can't write it perfectly, it's better not to try. But by sending even a rough version, you've broken the cycle. You've proved that action, not perfection, defines your progress. When you reframe productivity this way, something powerful happens. It becomes less about checking boxes and more about reclaiming control. You stop asking, is this good enough for others, and start asking, does this move me forward even a little? That question alone shifts the entire weight of expectation off your shoulders. And the best part? Progress compounds. Small wins create momentum. One action today makes the next action tomorrow a little easier. Over time, those micro moments add up to transformation. What once felt impossible begins to feel natural, not because you forced yourself into perfection, but because you gently rewired yourself into consistency. Here's the truth. Productivity is not about proving your worth. It's about reclaiming your power from the grip of trauma. Every step, no matter how small, is evidence that you're breaking free. Progress is not about the size of the action. It's about the courage to act at all. So the next time perfection whispers, not enough, remind yourself every small step is resistance. Every imperfect move is progress. And progress, no matter how tiny, is the loudest answer you can give to the voice of trauma that once told you to stay silent. Engagement cue. Let me ask you something real, something that might stir a memory you've been carrying quietly. What's one thing people often call laziness in you, but you now realize might actually be a defense or an old wound? Think about it for a moment. Maybe it's the way you put off phone calls and others label you as careless or unorganized. But deep down, those phone calls might remind you of moments when your voice was dismissed or your words were twisted. Maybe it's not laziness, it's protection. Or maybe it's the way you avoid starting a project you've dreamed of, writing, painting, launching that business. People may say you just don't have discipline. But if you look closer, maybe what holds you back is a memory of being criticized so harshly that your nervous system learned to freeze at the thought of failing again. Not laziness, just an old scar flaring up. Sometimes it's even simpler. Maybe you struggle to keep your space clean and the people around you see it as carelessness. But if you trace it back, maybe growing up, no matter how much effort you put in, someone always found something wrong. Your brain learned, why try? It'll never be good enough. Again, this isn't laziness. This is conditioning. Here's the powerful part. When you start to see your patterns through the lens of compassion instead of shame, you begin to unlock them. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? That question alone changes the entire conversation, because what once felt like a character flaw begins to look like a survival strategy your body created to keep you safe. And that's where healing begins, with awareness, with honesty, and with the courage to see yourself not as broken or lazy, but as someone carrying unhealed stories. So I'll ask you again, and I'd love for you to share your thoughts. What's one behavior in your life that people often mistake for laziness, but that you now recognize might actually be your nervous system protecting you from old pain? Your answer might not only help you, it might help someone else realize they're not lazy either, they're just human, learning to heal. Here's the truth. You were never lazy. You were surviving. Every pause, every delay, every moment you couldn't bring yourself to move forward, it wasn't proof of weakness. It was your body doing what it knew best, protecting you. Survival sometimes looks like stillness, like silence, like staying put. And though the world may have labeled that as laziness, it was never that. It was resilience in disguise. Now, every step you take, no matter how small, carries a deeper meaning. Washing one dish, making one call, writing one sentence, getting out of bed when everything in you wants to stay under the covers, those aren't small things. They're cracks in the old armor, tiny rebellions against the story that kept you frozen. They are you breaking free, piece by piece, from the chains of old pain. And here's the beautiful shift. Once you start seeing yourself this way, the fight changes. Life no longer feels like a battle against laziness, because laziness was never the enemy. What you're really doing is reclaiming your story, taking back your energy from the wounds that told you to shrink. Instead of asking, "Why can't I just do it?" you begin to ask, "How can I support the part of me that's still hurting?" That shift turns frustration into compassion, and compassion is what unlocks true change. You don't need to become a different person. You're already enough. Healing isn't about chasing some perfect version of productivity. It's about coming home to your true self, the one that existed before fear, judgment, and shame clouded your vision. And when you see yourself through that lens, life stops feeling like a struggle to fix laziness. It becomes a journey back to wholeness, to freedom, to you.